Hello and welcome back to the simulated 2024 F1 World Championship. This is round number 23 of 24 from Losail in Qatar. The penultimate round of the season, the final sprint weekend of the season, and the middle part of the triple header finale sees us return to the Middle East, where, although the IRL Drivers' Championship is now a done deal, everything is still to play for in both our simulated championships. This is the first race where both titles can be decided, even if that outcome is extremely unlikely given how close both championships are. Here's how the drivers' standings shape up after last time out at Las Vegas. We see a change of lead with Norris now leading the championship by 3 points ahead of Verstappen, the pair now being the only two drivers in contention for the crown. Sainz remains in P3 but is now only 4 points ahead of his teammate Leclerc, who jumps Tsunoda into P4. Alonso retakes P6 ahead of Hamilton, with Russell remaining P8 despite a flawless victory in Vegas. Gasly and Piastri both hold station in P9 and P10 respectively. The Constructors' standings sees Ferrari retain the top spot, however they are now only 7 points ahead of McLaren, who are making a late season charge for the Constructors' title. Red Bull slipped back a bit in third but still remain in the hunt, with Mercedes still remaining outsiders in fourth. RB and Aston Martin look set to duel for 5th place in the standings, and there's also a battle for 7th brewing between Sauber, Alpine and Williams, the French team leapfrogging Williams into 8th thanks to a podium finish from Gasly. Haas remain last but are now in triple digits. Compared to the actual standings, Verstappen has been crowned the Drivers' Champion of 2024, with the gap between himself and Norris now 63 points with a maximum of 60 available. Norris can now only fight for P2, with Leclerc now 21 points behind him. Piastri and Sainz are now only separated by 9 points in the fight for P4, Russell and Hamilton solidified their 6th and 7th spots after a 1-2 finish in Vegas, and Perez is almost guaranteed a P8 finish at this point. Alonso remains P9 despite not scoring points again, and Hülkenberg continues to round out the top 10. As for the Constructors, McLaren are now only 24 points ahead of Ferrari, with the two looking like the main championship protagonists, with Red Bull now 53 points off the lead, although things can swing their way with Qatar being a sprint weekend. Mercedes are now locked into P4 despite getting a 1-2 finish, and Aston Martin remain 5th, but may need to look over their shoulder towards the chasing pack. Haas reclaimed P6 from Alpine, the two teams now separated by 1 point. RB also remain ready to pounce, only 3 points further back. Williams remain ever lonelier in 9th, but not as lonely as Sauber, who still have 0 points in last. Now it's time to find out who will be racing as for the Qatar GP. Russell has been removed from the wheel once more, and I've also decided to remove Verstappen and Norris from the wheel to allow the AI to decide this championship themselves. With 16 drivers remaining on the wheel, let's spin it and see who will be racing as around Losail. And the wheel has selected Yuki Tsunoda in the RB. Tsunoda was a championship contender early on, but his charge faltered in the middle of this simulated season. However, he's still looking to secure a top 3 finish. Can we help the Japanese driver on his quest? It's time for the Qatar Grand Prix.
Today is all about the rhythm, all about the flow, because it's qualifying in Qatar. We're under the floodlights for a high-speed test that will set the grid for tomorrow. Wherever you are in the world, you're very welcome.
So here we are then, sat in the RB garage as Yuki Tsunoda. You may have seen the mouse cursor on the screen there, don't worry, I did get rid of it eventually. But we are in sprint qualifying. Remember, this is a sprint weekend, so we do the sprint qualifying first. This sprint qualifying session number 1, we cross the line and we take P1 in SQ1, which means we definitely have some good pace around this track. That's good for us. And we've lost from SQ1. Oscar Piastri in the McLaren, the big shock there, out in SQ1. Sergio Perez in the Red Bull. Stroll in 18th, Sargent in 19th, and Zhou Guanyu bringing up the rear in P20. But yes, Oscar Piastri definitely the biggest shock there. Not good for McLaren considering their Constructors' Championship ambitions. But nonetheless, it is only the sprint. Hopefully he'll do better in the main qualifying later on. As we're now into SQ2, we once again take P1 and SQ2, solidifying very good pace around here. And we've lost from SQ2, Carlos Sainz in the Ferrari, Hamilton in the Mercedes is P12, Magnussen in 13th, Alonso in 14th, and Nico Hülkenberg in 15th. Biggest shocks there, Sainz and Hamilton both outside the top 10. Not good for Ferrari either in their Constructors' Championship ambitions, but once again it is the sprint qualifying and not the main race, so probably best to get the jitters out of the way in the sprint qualifying so you can do your best in the main qualifying. As we now go on to SQ3, we definitely have some good pace in SQ1 and SQ2, so hopefully we could translate that into SQ3. A little bit wobbly coming out of turn 2 there, but we keep on the throttle as we head now towards the double right-hander of turns 4 and 5, I believe. Hugging the outside there, just keeping it within the track limits. And at the end of Sector 1, we do set a purple Sector 1, which means we're definitely on pace to take a sprint pole here. As you can see on the top left, Leclerc, Albon, Bottas and Ricciardo, 6th, 7th, 8th and 9th. No idea who is in P1 right now. I would assume it's either Max or Lando, considering they're both the championship protagonists at this point. As I mentioned now, they're the only two that can win the title, the simulated title at this point. It's different to IRL where Verstappen's already wrapped it up, but there we go. It is quite interesting that our simulated season has kind of ended up the same way, except a lot more closer. And the fact that the Constructors' title can be won by the same 3 teams that can win the Constructors' title IRL as well. So our simulated season has kind of aligned with the IRL season in a lot of respects. Nonetheless, we head through the final corner to the line, looking like a good lap time of 121 possibly. It is a 121.8. Is it good enough for pole? It is indeed good enough for pole position. Well, sprint pole anyway. Good for Tsunoda in his quest to finishing top 3 in the championship. Nonetheless, Yuki Tsunoda is on sprint pole. Max Verstappen is indeed in P2, with Lando Norris right behind him in P3. Not too surprising there. Then we got 2 Alpines of Gasly and Ocon. Very good result for them. They're in 4th and 5th. George Russell in the 6th, Leclerc 7th, Alexander Albon 8th for the Williams, Bottas in 9th for the Sauber, and then Daniel Ricciardo is 10th in the RB. And there we go, that is the sprint qualifying done. Next up is the actual sprint itself, so let's not waste any more time. It's the Qatar sprint.
Forget pit stops, forget fuel management. It's pedal to the metal all the way here as we get ready for today's sprint. Losail International was built in 2004, 3.3 miles, 16 turns with just 1 DRS zone, but it's a long straight and there's plenty of high-speed overtaking opportunities through the corners. Let's run you through the driver grid order for today's exciting sprint. Yuki Tsunoda lines up on pole position and Max Verstappen lines up alongside. Moving on to the rest of the grid, we have Norris, Gasly, Ocon, Russell, Leclerc, Albon, Bottas, Ricciardo, Sainz, Hamilton, Magnussen, Fernando Alonso, Hülkenberg, Oscar Piastri, Perez, Stroll, Sargent and Zhou Guanyu. Which of these drivers will get pole position today? We will soon find out. Welcome to the commentary box. I'm Alex Jakes, delighted to say joining us for this intriguing race is Anthony Davidson. So a sprint race today, and that means lights to flag, no stops. And how is that going to affect the driver behind the wheel?
Absolutely. So for today, there's no pit stop, or shouldn't be a pit stop anyway, if things go right, and you can forget about strategy. You're just driving today as fast as you can, make those overtakes if you need to, and that's what a sprint weekend's all about.
So here we are then on the grid, sprint pole for Yuki Tsunoda in the RB. And as the commentator said, there shouldn't be a pit stop required, and our strategy seems to confirm that. Mediums all the way. It does suggest a one stop as an alternative strategy, but we're not going to do that. We're going to go around the sprint on the mediums. I believe it's 19 laps, 18 or 19 laps. I can't remember exactly, but nonetheless, I don't know why the commentator said about pole position. Again, they still got like the old sprint format in their minds. This is definitely not setting the grid for the main race, that's for sure. But nonetheless, about 18 or 19 laps around Losail should be very good. Flat out to the floor. I think the most interesting thing that's going to be happening here is the fight between Verstappen and Norris, because obviously they're the 2 championship contenders, and also one starting second and the other one's third. So whoever gets a better start here is going to definitely set the course of this championship, at least for the sprint. Obviously, there's not as many points to the sprint, but every point does count in this championship, considering how close both championships are. Remember, Ferrari and McLaren are only separated by 7 points at the top of the constructors, and Verstappen and Norris are only separated by 3 points as we move to 5 red lights. And it's lights out and away we go. We're a bit hesitant off the line, but Norris actually makes an amazing start. Jumps up to second and is looking to take the lead from us as we go into turn 1. Verstappen not having a good start at all, as Gasly has also jumped him as well. So Norris absolutely ending up the better of the 2 championship protagonists, at least at the start. But we do hold off Norris going into turn 4 here, I believe. Or turn 3, I should say. We got ourselves in the lead, Norris in second and Gasly in third. Verstappen dropping down the 4th, and he has Albon all over the back of him. As we now move to the end of Sector 1 into Sector 2, the slow left-hander. We're trying to get ourselves a second ahead so Norris doesn't challenge us with the DRS on the next lap. But he is still half a second behind us, so we do need some more pace through the second half of this lap. As you can see, the order is changing all the while down the left-hand side. Piastri's actually lost a spot to Perez, it looks like. Perez trying to make a move on Alonso, and actually does so. So they're both side by side, but I think Perez has actually made up 2 spots on lap 1, which is very good for him. As for us at the front, though, Norris is very much holding on to us as we try to get ahead now into the last part of this lap. But Norris is very much keeping up with us, and Norris looking to take the lead here in this sprint. But Gasly also right behind him as well. But Verstappen is actually slipping off the back of the top 3 here as we now move on to lap 5. Actually, not really much overtaking going on, but as we see Alonso going into turn 1, he's lost quite a few positions. It looks like he's going to lose a few more positions as he's pulling over to the side of the road. It looks like Alonso has a problem. Looks like his engine has given up the ghost, and Alonso is going to be at least the first retirement of this Qatar sprint. Very unfortunate for him. Last year's simulated champion. Obviously, he's not going to win the championship this year. He won't be able to retain his title, but very disappointing for him. He is in a fight with Hamilton in the drivers currently for P6. He's only just ahead of Hamilton. As we move on to lap 6 now, as you can see, we actually got quite far ahead. Gasly now trying to make a move on Lando Norris into turn 1 for P2. Lando Norris trying to hang around the outside. He actually gets the inside line going into turn 2, which allows him to keep the spot for now. But Gasly very much feisty, and as you can see behind them, Albon's actually overtaken Verstappen for P4, so Verstappen losing more spots, but Norris is now looking to lose a spot as Gasly blasts by him on the main straight into P2, and Verstappen actually overtaking Albon once more for P4. So 2 championship protagonists are now third and fourth, although not for much longer. As you can see, this this DRS zone at Qatar very powerful for overtakes. And Norris tries to go around the outside of Gasly to turn 1 and actually makes the move going into turn 2. So Norris back ahead of now Gasly and Albon ahead of Verstappen again. But this DRS zone proving to be the best overtaking spot on this track. You're going to see a lot of DRS overtakes in this race. And so yeah. There's those 2 spots are going to change a lot, as we see now Leclerc in P6. Remember, Ferrari top of the Constructors' Championship, but oh no, it looks like Leclerc's also pulling over to the side, and I don't know what Sainz is doing behind him. He's kind of getting held up by his own teammate, and I think Sainz actually made contact with Leclerc and has broken off a piece of his front wing, so very clumsy there from the 2 Ferraris. But Leclerc pulling over to the side, Leclerc looking like the second retirement of this sprint, and he is indeed. Not very good for Ferrari and the Constructors' Championship, considering Norris is actually in P3 right now currently, so who knows at this point for the constructors. Remember, the sprint only gives a few points, so it won't be too bad for Ferrari, but remember, every point counts in both championships. As we see now, yeah, Sainz indeed coming into the pits for a change of front wing, it looks like, or maybe a puncture. Actually, no, they're not changing the front wing. It might have been a puncture, actually, for Sainz there, which is very unfortunate for him. But Sainz coming in for a set of soft tyres, and he's now all the way at the back. No, not good for Ferrari in the sprint. McLaren definitely need to maximise their sprint points here, as we see Gasly making a move for on Lando Norris into turn 1, and Verstappen actually caught to the pair of them, but Gasly locks up going into turn 1 and loses all those positions. Oh, that is so unfortunate for the Alpine driver, but it was of his own mistake that cost him 3 spots. He was looking good for second, but now he's now down to P5. Moving on to the last lap of the sprint, Verstappen making a move on Norris down the main straight into turn 1, and Verstappen blast by Norris into turn 1. Verstappen ending up ahead of Lando Norris now in this sprint, which means the gap between them will close by 1 point. meaning that both of them now will be separated by 2 points if it finishes like this. We'll see if Norris can re-overtake Verstappen before the end of the sprint, as we see now this massive battle happening for P13 currently. Hulkenberg losing a lot of positions down the main straight, thanks to him being at the front of this train, and all the cars behind him having DRS. But yeah, what an intense battle there for P13, which isn't going to give them any points in the sprint or the race. But nonetheless, out in front, it's been a very, very comfortable sprint for us. We made it 15 seconds ahead of the cars behind us. As we go for the final corner now, it's an easy sprint win, and it's very scary pace for the main race as we now cross the line to win the sprint.
Yes! Good job, guys. Good one, good one.
So that's 8 points for Yuki Tsunoda and RB. Very useful for both their fights. Tsunoda looking to get 3rd place in the driver's standings, and RB looking to secure 5th place ahead of Aston Martin. So after 19 laps of the sprint, Yuki Tsunoda is the winner of the sprint. Max Verstappen in P2 ahead of Lando Norris, which means the gap between them does close by 1 point. Albon in 4th place, a very good result there for Albon and Williams. Gasly will be left to rue that mistake at the penultimate lap. He's down in 5th. Ocon 6th. Double points for Alpine, but it could have been a lot more. Lewis Hamilton in 7th, and Daniel Ricciardo makes it a double points finish for RB in 8th place. As for the rest of the classified finishers, we've got Kevin Magnussen in 9th, Sergio Perez making it up to P10, along with Oscar Piastri making it up to P11, George Russell slipping down to P12, not very good from him. Stroll is 13th, Bottas is 14th, Sargent in 15th, Zhou in 16th, and Nico Hulkenberg all the way down to 17th after starting the last lap in 13th. And then the last of the classified finish is indeed Carlos Sainz, the only person to make a pit stop in the sprint. And we had 2 retirements, which were Charles Leclerc and Fernando Alonso. And there we go, that is the sprint done, but we still got the main event to come. It's now time for the Qatar Grand Prix qualifying.
Today is all about the rhythm, all about the flow, because it's qualifying in Qatar. We're under the floodlights for a high-speed test that will set the grid for tomorrow. Wherever you are in the world, you're very welcome.
Why did Tsunoda look so lonely there? Well, no one even gave him any comfort. He won the sprint, for Christ's sakes, and he's looking very good for pole position. As we now move on to Q1 now, crossing the line. And indeed, we are looking very good for this qualifying, as we end up P1 once again. We're definitely maxing out our performance this weekend. We've lost from Q1, Kevin Magnussen in the Haas, Ocon in the Alpine, Hulkenberg in the other Haas, Gasly in the other Alpine, and then Logan Sargent in the Williams is last. So both Alpines, after both of them scoring points in the sprint, are both out in Q1. Very disappointing for the French pair there. As we move on to Q2 now, Piastri not looking very good, neither is Perez. Hopefully they can improve their times as we improve our time, well, we set our only time, as we go P1 once again in Q2, maintaining our perfect streak. And we've lost from Q2 Carlos Sainz, Oscar Piastri, Zhou Guanyu, Fernando Alonso, and Sergio Perez. So we got 1 Ferrari, 1 McLaren, and 1 Red Bull, all out of Q2. So the 3 Constructors' Championship protagonists each have a driver eliminated from Q2, which means only 1 driver from each of those teams is in Q3, as we now start our final lap of qualifying in Q3. Lando Norris actually only down to P7 there, so he definitely needs to make an improvement on his time, because I'm sure Verstappen is well out in front of him currently. But we do look formidable around this track. We do have a lot of pace around this track, which is very good for us and for RB, as we now make it through to the end of Sector 1. And indeed, we set another purple Sector 1, 1.1 seconds ahead of Hamilton in P6. Can't imagine what the gap is between us and the person currently on pole. But I'm sure it's quite large as well. As we move through Sector 2 now, I believe now Norris has actually crossed the line, and he's only P7 and looking to probably be P8, as we actually had a little bit of a wobble there going through that left-hander. We managed to keep it together, but it does prevent us from getting a purple Sector 2. As we move towards the end of the lap now, we're around 1.5 seconds ahead of 6th place, which is very good for us. For for our ambitions for pole position. Can we convert another pole position? We've already had a sprint pole position. Can we convert that to another pole position as we now head towards the line? Activate the DRS as early as we can. It's only 1:22, so it's actually a slower that time. But we do end up on pole for the main race, despite us having a bit of a wobble through the middle of Sector 2 there. But nonetheless, it's Yuki Tsunoda on pole, Max Verstappen in P2, and Max Verstappen actually set a blistering lap time compared to everyone else, so he's looking very formidable in P2. Charles Leclerc in P3, Russell in 4th, Albon in 5th for the Williams, continuing his very, very good Qatar Grand Prix weekend. Ricciardo in 6th, Hamilton in 7th, Lando Norris only in 8th in the McLaren, not very good for his championship chances. He definitely needs to make up some positions in the race. Bottas in 9th once again, and then Lance Stroll is P10 in the Aston Martin. And there we go, that is the grid set. It's now time for the Qatar Grand Prix.
Welcome back to Qatar. We had a year off due to a small footballing tournament in 2022, but it's back to Formula One right now. .3 miles, 16 turns with a single DRS zone at the exit of turn 16. It is a fast and flowing track with plenty of overtaking expected through the DRS zone down into turn 1. So with the race not far away from starting, here's what today's grid rundown looks like. Yuki Tsunoda lines up on pole position, edging out Max Verstappen, who will start from P2. Looking down the rest of the grid, we have Leclerc, Russell, Albon, Ricciardo, Hamilton, Norris, Bottas, Stroll, Sainz, Oscar Piastri, Zhou, Fernando Alonso, Perez, Magnussen, Ocon, Hülkenberg, Gasly, and Logan Sargent. That's it then. It's time to go racing as we head down trackside for today's race. Welcome to the commentary box. I'm Alex Jakes. Alongside me, a real authority on all things motor racing. It's a warm welcome back to Anthony Davidson. I love this moment in the weekend. Put us in their shoes right now. What are they feeling on the grid?
You've got to know, you've got to have a pre-race game plan. You've watched videos before you get into the car of previous races gone by. You know where you have to place your car if X, Y, or Z happens in front of you or behind you. So having this clear game plan is absolutely essential before you get in the car.
So here we are then on the grid once more as Yuki Tsunoda in the RB. Looking at our strategy, it looks like a one-stop actually, a medium to hard, so it looks like the tyres are actually pretty robust around this track, which I believe is the complete opposite of what it was last year, where the tyres seem to fall apart very, very easily. Hopefully the same thing doesn't happen in the IRL race, even though it did make the IRL race pretty interesting. It was the only interesting part of the IRL race last year, so who knows? Who knows about the tyres? I know they're bringing harder ones. You can see C1, C1, C2 and C3 there. Everyone's starting on the mediums, so it looks like either everyone is going to do the one stop or some of the cars back may be trying something a little different. We'll find out eventually as the race goes on. But we are doing the one stop. I would assume everyone around us is also doing the one stop as we head towards our P1 spot on the grid. Verstappen P2 and Norris P8. Norris is definitely going to need to make some moves going throughout this race if he wants to keep his lead in the championship. He needs to catch up to Verstappen, who's definitely going to try something in the turn 1, I would imagine, as we see now the last of the cars parking up on the grid. The two Alpines, pretty disappointing qualifying for them. Hopefully they can make up some position in the race as we move to 5 red lights. And it's lights out and away we go. Another tentative start for us, honestly. Leclerc making a good start, but Verstappen near on side by side going to turn 1. We tried to cover him off, but he dies down the inside. Very ambitious there from Max. Didn't even back off, but he does eventually back off, and we retain the lead from Max Verstappen. We did give him enough room, but there we go. We hold station in P1 and P2. Leclerc also in P3. It looks like a lot of us have maintained station. Except for Bottas. Bottas has actually made an amazing start, going from P9 to P6, which means Norris is now down to P9. Not very good for him. Only 2 points from there compared to Verstappen's 18. That would be a huge swing in Verstappen's favour if the race ended up like this. But it is only lap 1. There are 57 laps in this race, so anything can happen. But nonetheless, up in front, we're still in P1. In fact, we got a few movers down bottom. Piastri's also had a bad start as well, so McLaren not doing too well in this race. Piastri, who started in P12, is now down to P14. Now make that P15 as Perez now overtakes him. Piastri having an awful lap 1, losing many spots. So McLaren's constructors charge at the moment not looking too good at all, with one of their cars in P2 and you have one in P15. Ferrari have only one car in the points as well, but Leclerc is at least in P3, so that would be very good for Ferrari. And also Red Bull with 18 points can still very much be in the championship hunt as well. As we now move on to lap 3, now lap 4, we have actually broken away from DRS from Max Verstappen, which means Leclerc now has an opportunity to pass Verstappen into turn 1, and does so. So Leclerc now up to P2, Verstappen now down to P3, which is good for Norris, but Norris needs to make some moves of his own. He's still down in P9, behind Hamilton, ahead of Zhou. Norris really needs to make some moves, with Verstappen still looking to try and get to P2, and he's making a move on lap 9 down the inside, and Leclerc actually making a mistake there, and Russell got hitting the back of him. I think a piece of front wing came off Russell's car. It has indeed, so Russell with a broken front wing, not very good for him. And as you can see, he is slipping down the order. Ricciardo now passing Russell now into turn 1. Russell trying to hang around the outside, but with a broken front wing, I can imagine that his downforce levels aren't too good, and indeed Ricciardo blasts by him into turn 1. Russell falling down the order. I don't know why they haven't pitted him yet. Maybe they feel like they can hold it out until the first set of pit stops, but nonetheless, Russell not doing very good there at all. As you can see, Norris trying to make a move on Russell, but Zhou right behind him, pulling over to the side on the main straight. I don't know why he didn't go to the pits. He had a very good opportunity to go to the pits if his engine has blown up, which it has. Zhou looking like the first retirement of this Qatar Grand Prix. A shame for him. He was running in the points. Could have been a double points finish for Sauber here in their fight for P7, but unfortunately it looks like Zhou will be the first retirement of this race. Very unfortunate for him. I don't know why he hasn't pulled over to the side. There's a massive runoff area, Zhou. Come on. There we go. You could have easily pulled into the pits. Nonetheless, though, Zhou is the first retirement of this race. Very unfortunate for him indeed. As we move now on to lap 19, we can see Norris now making a move on his fellow countryman, George Russell, who still has a broken front wing. Norris trying to outdrag Russell into turn 1, but with his superior downforce, he's obviously going to make the move stick. And now Norris back up to 8th position, which is where he started. So he does need to make more moves. But person who is making moves is Max Verstappen now, going down the inside of Charles Leclerc into turn 1. Will he make the move stick, or will Leclerc manage to hold around the outside? Leclerc does hold around the outside, goes down the inside to turn 2. But Verstappen's still holding off. They're still both side by side, going through sector 1, heading into the double right-hander now of turn 4 and 5. Leclerc still trying to hold around the outside. He actually does. Albon looking to join in as well. Albon right behind them. They're still both side by side as they go to the end of sector 1 now. Into sector 2. Leclerc's the inside line, but Verstappen's still holding off around the outside. This is amazing racing between the two. And Verstappen just makes it into P2 ahead of Leclerc, but Leclerc gave him the biggest fight of his goddamn life. Very good racing there from the two drivers. As we now go to Ricciardo and Bottas. Bottas trying to make a move on Ricciardo going into turn 1. Bottas trying to hold it on, but I think Ricciardo might make the move stick here as he has the inside into turn 2, and indeed does. Ricciardo making the move on Bottas now. Ricciardo up to P5. A very good day for RB so far. Person who's not having a good day at the moment is Oscar Piastri. He has made himself back up to P11. He's just outside the points, but he makes a mistake going out the final corner and even hits the wall for good measure, so he probably has front wing damage. But Piastri, with a very rookie move coming out the last corner, is now all the way down in P17, maybe even P18, as you can see now Sainz coming around the last corner, and indeed Sainz also overtakes Piastri. Sainz has already pitted. I believe Sainz is making a 2-stop rather than a 1-stop, but Piastri, with a very rookie error there, going all the way down to P18. As we move up to lap 27 on to lap 28 now, we come in for our one and only pit stop. We're going from medium to hard tyres, and we made a very huge gap to Leclerc actually. So if the pit stop goes well, we should retain the lead of this race. And the pit stop does go well, 2.4 seconds, a very good stop there from the RB crew. And as you can see on the mini-map, Leclerc and Verstappen coming down the main straight. But looks like, yep, Leclerc and Verstappen both coming in as well. Albon not coming in for his pit stops, so Albon now takes P2. And Ricciardo not pitting in either, which means we've got a double RB podium currently, even though that's not going to last very long. As we see now Leclerc changing his tyres a lot, but Verstappen's already pulled out, and Verstappen has jumped Leclerc in the pit stop. So the Red Bull mechanics working much faster than the Ferrari mechanics, and that's left Leclerc behind Verstappen now. With a lot of work to, well, maybe not a lot of work to do, but some work to do, as they both come out of the pits now, pretty much nose to tail, and Hamilton also pitting in as well, just behind them. So there we go. We got Verstappen now ahead of Leclerc, but Leclerc hopefully should keep the DRS behind Verstappen. Indeed, he does. Onto lap 29 now, and he tries blasting by Verstappen on the main straight, but Verstappen just holding him off there, but Leclerc just keeping the inside line into turn 2, which means he does make the move, maybe? No! We got another side-by-side battle between these two drivers, as now we head to the double right-hander of turns 4 and 5, now with Verstappen on the inside of turn 4 and 5, going into turn 6 now. Leclerc's going down the inside, but as we saw, the inside line is not usually the best line, as he tries now to go down the inside, but I believe Verstappen's still on the outside, and indeed he is, and Verstappen holds on to P2. P2 there very much in Verstappen's bag for now, but anything can happen, and I'm sure Leclerc will try again for P2 in the next lap. On the same lap, lap 29, we see now Oscar Piastri looking like he's pulling over to the side of the road. Piastri having a day to forget, having a weekend to forget really, and it just caps off with another retirement. So Oscar Piastri out of the Qatar Grand Prix. Once again, not very good for McLaren's constructors' hopes, but we still have Norris in the points, and speaking of Norris, he's now actually making a move on his former teammate Daniel Ricciardo, going around the outside of turn 1. Ricciardo trying to hold on the inside, but Norris has way more speed. He's looking like a much speedier car, is Lando here, as he moves up to P6 now. And a few laps later, he's now challenging his fellow countryman Lewis Hamilton now going down the main straight into turn 1. Norris blasting by him with a DRS, and Hamilton concedes position. Norris now up to P5. So it's taken a while, but now Norris is definitely making up the positions. He's now only 2 positions behind Max, and as you can see, he's actually caught up to the leading pair, with Verstappen making a mistake going into turn 1. He's locked up. Verstappen has locked up, and he's lost 2 spots to Leclerc and Albon. Albon actually now in the podium spots for Williams. A very good result there for Williams, but Verstappen making a rare mistake into turn 1, and now his championship rival is right behind him. Didn't really expect that from the beginning, but there we go. As we now move on to lap 47, we see now Albon blasting by Leclerc into turn 1. Albon now to P2 in the Williams. What an amazing result for Albon and Williams here if they can hold on to P2. But that DRS zone is definitely going to be very interesting now, as we now see Perez, who's been making his way up the field, tried to challenge for the points now. He goes around the outside of Stroll just before turn 1, and now Perez is up to the points. So that's good for Red Bull and their constructors' championship chances. But Verstappen definitely needs to try and get back into P2 as quickly as possible. As we move to the end of the race now, as we see now Bottas and Alonso having a scrap for P8. Alonso trying to hang around the outside, trying to hold off Bottas, and indeed he does for now. But Bottas very punchy in his Sauber today, very good to see, and he doesn't have any penalties unlike in Vegas. As we now move to the last lap of the race, as we've seen already, the DRS zone has seen a lot of changes of position, and we're going to have to see one more, as now Albon tries to go around the outside of Leclerc and does, and Verstappen also trying to go around the outside of Leclerc, but doesn't do it. So Leclerc holding on to P3, Albon now to P2, and Norris is definitely going to try and capitalise if anything happens to the cars in front of him, as we see Alonso still holding off Bottas for P8. And Perez is actually holding off Stroll for P10. Stroll trying to get into the points for Aston Martin as well, making a double points finish for Aston Martin, but it's just held off by Perez. As for us at the front, well, nothing really happened. It's once again a dominant display, just like in the sprint. We're nearly a minute ahead of P2. We've basically dominated this whole weekend from start to finish. As we come around the final corner now, Yuki Tsunoda wins the Qatar Grand Prix.
Yes! Good job, guys. Good one, good one.
And that will definitely help in his fight for P3 in the standings. But who finished ahead? Verstappen or Norris? We don't know yet, but we're about to find out.
It's Dreamland for Yuki. Tsunoda takes the victory.
And it's always good to get that momentum on your side, and it's really good for your confidence as well. The more confident you are, the further that can take you.
And it's time now for the podium celebrations, and how well deserved is this one. This is a team all about giving young, talented drivers an opportunity to race and to win. RB are your winners here today.
So there we go. Yuki Tsunoda wins the Qatar Grand Prix. Albon in second for the Williams. What a result for him and Williams there. And then Leclerc taking the final podium spot in third. But what matters is who finished ahead of Verstappen or Norris. They were fourth and fifth. Verstappen was ahead of Norris when I checked going over the line, but things could have changed in the time between us crossing the line and themselves crossing the line. So there we go with the podium celebrations, and yeah, as you can see, Norris has actually ended up ahead of Verstappen just at the death. Both of them separated by 0.04 of a second. That's wild to think about. But nonetheless, Tsunoda is your Qatar Grand Prix winner. Albon in P2, Leclerc in P3, Norris in P4 ahead of Verstappen. Remember, Norris started in 8th, Verstappen in 2nd, and somehow Norris has ended up ahead of his championship rival. That is crazy. Hamilton in P6, Ricciardo in P7, a good result there for RB. Alonso in 8th, Bottas in 9th, and Perez is the last of the points finishers in 10th. As for the rest of the classified finishers, we got Lance Stroll in P11, Hulkenberg in 12th, George Russell in 13th, a very, very disappointing day for him. Gasly in P14, Sainz in 15th, Ocon in 16th, Sargent in 17th, and then Magnussen is the last of the classified finishers in P18. And we had 2 retirements, which were Oscar Piastri and Zhou Guan Yu. And there we go. That is the penultimate race of this simulated season done. One more race remains. The Abu Dhabi Grand Prix, the finale. Both championships are going to be decided at Yas Marina on the 6th of December 2024. That will be when the video goes live. Who will win the Drivers' Championship? Will it be Norris? Will it be Verstappen? Who will win the Constructors? Will it be Ferrari? Will it be McLaren? Will it be Red Bull? Maybe even Mercedes. I don't think it'll be Mercedes. I think Mercedes are out of it at this point. But a week from now, a week from when this video goes live, the finale of the simulated 2024 F1 World Championship, the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix. Make sure you tune in for that one. It's going to be very exciting indeed. Both championships on the line. Who will win? Will it be Lando Norris? Will it be Max Verstappen? Tune in a week's time to find out, because I'm excited. I haven't recorded that one yet, so I don't even know. As for the standings after the Qatar Grand Prix, Lando Norris and Max Verstappen are now separated by 4 points between them. Funny story, if Verstappen had ended up ahead of Norris, they would have been tied going into the final race. But with Norris's last gasp overtake on Max Verstappen, they are now separated by 4 points going into the finale. Still very close between the two. Very exciting. Yuki Tsunoda now moves up to 3rd place with his pretty much dominant display in Qatar. Leclerc ends up, still remains in 4th actually. Sainz moves from 3rd to 5th after a very disappointing weekend for himself. Hamilton jumps Alonso. Hamilton now 6th ahead of Alonso in 7th, with the pair separated by 3 points. Russell pretty much solidifies 8th. Well, he doesn't really solidify 8th because Gasly is 15 points behind him in 9th. And then Alexander Albon moves back into the top 10 after a very good weekend for himself, with Oscar Piastri slipping down to 11th. Not very good for him, or for McLaren for that matter. Speaking of the Constructors, Ferrari are still in the lead, but they are now only 4 points ahead of McLaren. So McLaren really needed Piastri to get more points around Qatar, but nonetheless, the gap has shrunk to 4 points, and Red Bull are still in the hunt as well. They are 19 points off the lead, so if Perez can get his act together in the final race, Red Bull can very much win this Constructors title as well. 3 teams fighting for the Constructors. Will it be Ferrari, will it be McLaren, or will it be Red Bull? Only time will tell. Mercedes remain 4th, but RB, thanks to their massive haul of points, are still within range of Mercedes and P4. They are 31 points behind Mercedes with 44 maximum points to play for. So even though Mercedes are looking likely to remain in 4th, RB still have a shot. Who doesn't have a shot? Aston Martin are locked into 6th. They cannot catch RB, nor can they be caught by Sauber or Williams for that matter. Them two teams now tied on points in 7th and 8th, but Sauber have the better results, so they remain in P7 ahead of Williams. Alpine in 9th with a double sprint points finish. They were hoping to get more points in the main race. Unfortunately, they did not. And then Haas looking very likely now to finish last in the Constructors' Championship. 40 points behind Alpine with 44 maximum. They would need an amazing result in Abu Dhabi to get anywhere other than 10th, but that is very unlikely at this point. So there we go. That is the Qatar Grand Prix done. Penultimate race done. We have one final race remaining. Abu Dhabi Grand Prix in a week's time. Make sure to watch that one. Make sure to watch all the F1 videos this year to see how this championship has ended up at this point. Because there's been some very fascinating developments in this season. Remember when Tsunoda was leading the championship for the longest time? I remember. He may end up P3 now at this point. But Verstappen versus Norris. Ferrari versus McLaren versus Red Bull. Only one of those drivers can win the Drivers' Championship. Only one of those teams can win the Constructors. And in a week's time, you will find out. We will all find out who will take the simulated crown for 2024. Nonetheless, if you've enjoyed this video, make sure to like, make sure to subscribe so you're notified when the Abu Dhabi video goes live, because it's going to be a very entertaining one. And yeah, hopefully you enjoyed this race, and hopefully I'll see you all next time.